Welcome to the Skull Session podcast. We got a little bit of a breaking news show. I'm Tom Orr. I'm not really the host, but Marc Givler's, this is his show, but I'm also here. So, Marc, we have some exciting breaking news for the Ohio State football team, and the 2023 recruiting class has a quarterback now.
Yes, Lincoln Kienholz, Pierre, South Dakota. Who would have thought? You go to Pierre, South Dakota to get your quarterback. That happened. We're here, just wrapped up media availability here at the Woody, so kind of happened during that. So it's been a fun morning, and definitely a big pickup for Ohio State. I think people are going to be pretty intrigued by this guy.
And it felt like for quite a while, they had their 5-star in 2020 in C.J. Stroud. They had their 5-star in 2021 in Devin Brown. They had their 5-star in 2022 Kyle McCord, and then Devin Brown.
Yep.
And then they had their 5-star in 2024 in Dylan Raiola. And I think everyone was kind of just sort of hand waving this, like, yeah, I mean, whatever. You just get it. You need a warm body to keep, to keep the seat warm between the 5-stars. But this feels like this could be significantly more than just the warm body to keep the seat warm between the 5-stars.
Ohio State thinks they've got a real hidden gem here, and he was committed to Washington, and coming from South Dakota and then committing early to Washington, I don't think he got a lot of attention nationally. And I think as kind of things wore on here these past 2-3 months, they got to see more and more of him. Corey Dennis went up to the high school while Brock Glenn was still committed to Ohio State, and watched Kienholz throw, and things really kind of picked up from there, and he had an unbelievable senior season. So, time is going to tell if they were right or wrong on this, but they think they've got something here. They think they've got a legitimate difference-making quarterback prospect. He's moved way up the rankings. He obviously before he committed to Ohio State, he's been moving up. He's, I think, in the top 200 now for several of the sites. So it's interesting because, again, I think they took this quarterback situation, I think, a little bit too lightly. This was really important they get a quarterback. Waiting for Dylan Raiola is not a strategy in your quarterback room. He's not going to be here for another year. And when he gets here, you don't know. I mean, look, I think the world of Dylan Raiola as a player prospect, but he's going to be a true freshman in 15 months or whatever it's going to be. So waiting for him and hoping that he's going to be this all-world guy at the minute he steps on campus is really not a good strategy. And the elephant in the room is that Ohio State's going to have a quarterback competition here in the spring, and we'll see. We have historically seen guys who don't win those competitions transfer. So I'm not putting anyone in the portal yet, but I'm just saying you have to protect against that. You have to have another body, not just a body, but someone you really are high on. And I think they got a guy here that they really like.
Well, and Ryan Day has talked in the past about wanting to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks, and you're only going to have, even with Kienholz, you're only going to, let's assume C.J. Stroud is turning pro after this year. I'm going to go way out on a limb and assume that. If he does, and if you don't bring someone else in the portal, even with Kienholz, you've only got 3 guys, and then if someone transfers, and I'm going to go way out on a limb and guess that the quarterback competition for next year will go into fall camp, will not be resolved by the end of the spring. But if at some point someone else leaves, well, then you're down to 2 scholarship quarterbacks, which is really, you always want at least the pair and a spare, and you're really playing with fire at that point. So just from a numbers perspective, this is crucial.
Yeah, and they don't have much experience. Kyle McCord has some experience. He's got a start under his belt, and Devin Brown's going to have virtually no experience. So you want to have as many guys in there getting reps and getting better and pushing each other as you can. I think it's possible they'll go to the portal this winter or spring, maybe. Maybe spring might be a better time to do it and try to get a veteran. Now, that's not, in my opinion, at this point, going to be a guy they're necessarily bringing in here to start, unless it would have to be a really attractive name. And I think the 2 that come to my mind aren't going anywhere, and that's Drake May and Caleb Williams. Those guys are not going anywhere, so it would have to be that type of name, I think. But I think it's probably going to be more along the lines of a Gunnar Hoke, like, let's fill out the room, let's bring in a guy who's been through this for 3 or 4 years and is not necessarily coming in here with the idea that they're going to be given the keys to the program. So I think that move could still be made as well to kind of supplement what they've done here.
Yeah, I always think of Chris Chugginoff when we have those kind of conversations, because Chugs was good enough that by the time he had been there for a year, he could play, and he was the backup at a lot of times. And so, yeah, that feels like that's kind of the upside of what you're probably looking at in the portal. In terms of Kienholz, what kind of player is Ohio State getting? I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb again. Once again, I'm using my telepathic powers and assume strong arm, accurate thrower, because this is a Ryan Day quarterback. I think the question everyone's going to have is, okay, beyond that, does he like to run? That's going to be the question everyone's going to have. So,
yes, he does.
Okay.
I think he is, in terms of his style of play, is very much what Ryan Day is looking for. So he's got a good size frame. He's 6'3", he's about 200 pounds already. He's going to fill out. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. But he's a really good athlete. He's an all-state caliber baseball player. He's an all-state caliber basketball player. About 18 points a game last year as a junior on the basketball floor. I guess he had a really dominant baseball season last year. I guess he's a heck of a baseball player too. So, very good athlete. But one of those guys who is pass first with athleticism. So, it's interesting. You know, I'm thinking about comps, and the only two guys I can think of are probably unfair because they were number one overall picks, but he's got a bit of the like Joe Burrow, Alex Smith vibe to him, where they're always going to want to be making plays with their arm first, but they'll hurt you with their legs if you let them, and he's very willing to do that, and he's got the big frame and the athleticism to do that, and I love the way he throws the ball. He throws a great deep ball. Phil has all sorts of just beautiful spotting on the deep ball, but you know, he's got this baseball thing too, where he can kind of, you know, throw from different angles and just kind of run around and be athletic and make plays. So he's very interesting to me. That, you know, the competition level, which
that's the next question, because you're all state in football, you're all state in basketball, you're all state in football. There are not as many football and basketball and baseball players in the state of South Dakota, so that doesn't necessarily mean quite as much as it might in Florida or Texas or Ohio. But the quality of the competition, this is not someone who we saw at Ohio State camp over the summer. They brought in a couple other quarterbacks, none of which they ended up signing. So we haven't seen him throw in person. Corey Dennis went up there, and I assume has seen him throw in person. So they kind of know what they're getting. But anytime you get that small school, small state, small everything, that has to at least be a little bit of a concern, right?
Yeah, that's going to be the knock or the negative, or the, you know, question here is the competition. I think, you know, could that maybe delay his development as far as maybe it takes him a year to get used to the speed? I think that's certainly something there. But again, they've gone up there, they've done their research, they've seen him throw, so they know at least they're getting some idea of his arm talent. And obviously, again, I don't really care what state you're in. If you're all state in 3 different sports, you're a pretty good athlete. You probably have pretty good muscle memory. You're probably able to, you know, you're one of those, seems like he's one of those guys. I always kind of talk about certain other guys in this way that, you know, they may not play golf, but, you know, you put a 7-iron in their hands, let them go to the driving range, and then you take them out to the course, and, you know, a couple weeks later, they're breaking 90 already, and it's like, geez, I've been playing golf all my life, and I have to struggle to break 85 or something. But, you know, it's one of those, seems like he's one of those kids. And so I think they're intrigued about that. But yeah, it's the elephant in the room. You know, we haven't seen a quarterback like this come out of the state, maybe ever. You know, it's kind of a funny thing is I've heard people label him like the best high school football prospect to come out of South Dakota, like ever. And it's like, well, I don't really know what that means necessarily. I mean, I have to go back and look at what they've actually produced. But yeah, that's going to be a question that lingers, you know, until he gets here.
And I'm pretty sure it will only be the second player Ohio State has ever taken on scholarship out of South Dakota, after offensive lineman Grant Schmidt, who signed in 2015 and was here for about 37 minutes and then went back to South Dakota to go play for South Dakota State, I believe. But yeah, the Kienholz will be interesting to watch and just see what they've got, because in this era of camps and you know, competitions and all-star games and all that kind of stuff, it's rare to have someone who none of us have actually seen in person, you know, who is going to sign to play quarterback at Ohio State. So that'll be very interesting. You know, your story about the golf reminded me of Justin Fields when he was here, telling, I think it was him telling a story, but maybe it was Corey Dennis or something. They had, you know, the position group had gone out to go play golf, and Fields had basically never played golf before, and was like breaking par, and I mean, like guys who are that level of athlete, they can just kind of do things, and it's just like how, and the answer is I don't know, I'll just kind of do it. So I guess to wrap things up, we are now we are a week away from early signing day. There is still a surprising amount of question marks with the Ohio State class for this point of the cycle. It feels like, you've got Kienholz, you've got what's his name out of Indiana, Mickens.
Yep, Joshua
Mickens.
Yep.
You've got Mateo Uyunglele. You've got, will they take a running back? You've got, I mean, there's a whole bunch of, Caleb Downs has still not officially said at Alabama and nothing else. I mean, is this the craziest last week before a early signing day that you can remember?
Yeah, I think it is one of the more, it's definitely since the early signing period. Going back to when it was all in February, we had some wild run-ups, but this one's interesting. Yeah, they're trying to hold on to what they have. I think they're good with Jelani Thurman right now, their tight end commit. But that's one of those, you kind of cross your fingers and just make sure. But I think they're okay there. Kian Lee, defensive back commit, flirting with Auburn, visited Auburn a couple weeks ago. There's talk he might be back on Auburn's campus this weekend. If that happens, I mean, I'm already at a fairly high alert there with him. If that happens, I think that's really bad news. I think that's a very bad omen if he ends up showing up for their big recruiting weekend this weekend. So they're trying to kind of lock some guys in. I feel great about Brandon Ennis at this point. Jermaine Matthews is signing and enrolling early, 4-star corner. Obviously, Brandon Ennis is the 5-star wide receiver commit. So there's a lot to watch. I think they're going to get Joshua Mickens. He may wait until a January All-Star game, so we don't, that's fluid on the timing. I have not thrown in the towel on Damon Wilson. I think that is still very much ongoing. Damon has kind of shut things down in terms of talking to anybody, including college coaches. He's got a state championship game Saturday afternoon, and I'm told he's going to then sort of regroup with his family after that game and really make the final decision, and then we'll see what happens. But Ohio State's still plugging away there, and then you got Uyunglele, and that could go down Wednesday on signing day, or he could wait until February. There's starting to be a little more juice to the idea that he may actually sign in December, but there's been nothing official on that. I still think Ohio State's in a pretty good spot there, but USC is obviously pushing very hard, and the right conditions have been there for USC to make that push with having a pretty good season and being able to go sell like, hey, we had a great season. If we had a mediocre defense, we'd probably be in the playoff right now. We need guys like you to get our defense in so we can get into the playoff. So that's going to be a sales pitch there, along with, of course, the elephant in the room of NIL and the LA market and everything else. So still some sorting out there, but Larry Johnson was at Mateo's game. They won a state championship last weekend. Larry Johnson was there, so I think things are still going pretty well there for Ohio State.
Well, that is a lot to keep an eye on over the next week or so, and a great place to keep an eye on. All of that will be at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Mark and Alex have been very, very busy with not only the recruiting piece of things, but also the transfer portal piece of things. The Buckeyes have lost 3 players to the portal so far this cycle. Already, approaching other guys. Alex had a great piece of information on our huddle board about an offensive lineman who the Buckeyes are looking at right now pretty seriously and hoping to get involved with in that portal as well. So we'll have if you want to be up to date on all that stuff, and there's going to be a lot of news over the next week or two on both of those fronts. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Membership is less than 50 cents a day, and you get access to not only our recruiting guys, but also our X's and O's guys, also our team guys, Tony, Kevin, and I. By the way, there's a Peach Bowl coming up. You may have heard something about that. It is a very busy, very active time at BuckeyeHuddle.com, so sign up today so you don't miss out on any of the excitement, any of the news, any of the insanity in what should be a very eventful couple weeks as we wrap up 2022. So thank you guys all for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.